Welcome students to another in our Investigating Science series. Today we have an exciting lesson for you as we're in grade 5 looking at how to make a rain gauge. Let's go. So these are our guiding questions for this lesson. What are some of the instruments that we can use to collect information about the weather? And where it concerns a rain gauge, what is it and how does it work? And finally, what everyday materials can we use to make this rain gauge? All right, so what do you remember about the weather? Well, of course, you may realize that if the day is sunny or it has overcast conditions, or if it's hot, these conditions are basically what we refer to as the weather. So day-to-day changes in temperature, rainfall, cloud cover, wind speed, and direction would refer to the weather. And we have different instruments that we can use to measure these changes. So you, of course, would have heard about your thermometer. But there are other instruments that you may not be aware of, such as the barometer, wind vane, and of course, our rain gauge. We use these instruments to collect information about the weather, and the data that we collect, we can use to make weather forecasts. So the same thing that your meteorologist does every night, that's what we will be able to do with this data. All right, so let's look at some of these weather instruments. I want you to identify them and figure out what they're used to measure. So first, of course, you should be able to recognize a thermometer. And of course, we use the thermometer to measure temperature. Look at the second picture. What do you think that instrument is? Yes, that's actually an example of a rain gauge. And as the name suggests, we can use it to measure the amount of rainfall. Let's look at two more. What do you think this instrument is? Yes, this is used to measure the speed of the wind, and it is called an anemometer. Try to pronounce that and learn to spell that. It is an anemometer. All right, and our final instrument that we're looking at today, yes, that looks like a wind vane. And of course, you can guess it, it is used to measure the direction of the wind. So you can see that we have the compass points on that wind vane: north, south, east, and west. All right, so let's get into our lesson for today. How can we make a simple rain gauge using everyday materials? All right, so what are some of the things that we will need? Now look at the picture and you will get an idea of some of the things that we'll be using today. So nothing fancy, simple plastic bottle, right? Of course, we would need our scissors to cut, a ruler, right? We're going to use some pebbles to stabilize the bottle, and of course, we should have a marker to mark off the distances. All right, what steps will we take? Let's look at these steps. So we're going to collect this large bottle that we have here, all right? And we're going to use our pair of scissors as shown in the diagram, and we're going to try to cut off the top of this plastic bottle. So let's go. Of course, if you're doing this particular activity, it would be best to get the help of an adult, your teacher, or your parent, all right? Hopefully, we can do this properly. All right. All right, hopefully yours is better than mine. Okay, all right, so we have our top, we have cut off the top, all right? And it will be shaped somewhat like a funnel, all right? And we're going to use that a little afterwards. As mentioned, we want to ensure that when we're using this, it doesn't topple over. So let me just cut a little better, all right? So we're just going to place some pebbles at the bottom just to ensure that it remains fixed, all right? And of course, because the rain gauge measures the height or the depth of rain that has fallen, we need to be able to measure that depth. So a very easy and simple way to do that would be, for instance, to put a strip of tape along the side of our plastic bottle, as shown here. And then we're going to use our ruler to measure and mark off distances in centimeters. Now, sometimes when the weather is being reported, you will hear that you're expecting so many inches of rainfall, right? But of course, because we're thinking metric, we want to mark this off in centimeters. So you just mark off 1 centimeter, 2 centimeter, 3, and we go all the way to the top. All right, hopefully I'm seeing this clearly. All right, so we're marking off the height, and we're doing it in centimeters. As I said, we may find the weather being reported in inches, in terms of rainfall, how many inches of rainfall, and we can know whether we're going to get a flood or what, yes? But we're marking this off in centimeters, all right? And so what is the purpose of this? So obviously, when you have placed your rain gauge in a particular location where it won't be disturbed, but where it will get full access to whatever rain is falling, then you can go back and check to see how many centimeters of rainfall had fallen for that day. All right? So we're going to put on our cover. So we have marked the distances. We're going to place our cover back on top of our rain gauge. We can see the distances there. All right? And just imagine if rain was falling. So I'm just going to mimic some rain falling here. Right? Your rain gauge would be, just fixing it here, in a location, right? The rain is falling, and we would basically be collecting this rainfall, right? And of course, once it reaches a particular height, we can say 1 centimeter of rainfall had fallen, 2 centimeters, and so on. All right, so let's see if we can fill it up and see how much rain has fallen over a particular period. All right, so once it reaches the bottom here, this is where we're marking off as 1 centimeter. Okay, all right. So we would have labeled the distances, right? And we're going to add, and you're going to tell me if you can. So this is a flood right here, right? Obviously, so much rainfall has fallen. And of course, you can see that it is now reaching about 2 centimeters of rainfall that has fallen. And that is how you would have designed your very simple rain gauge, all right? So no need to buy a fancy rain gauge. No need to tell me that you can't afford one. You can fashion one using your plastic, making sure that you have outlined the different lengths, right? And you can try to secure this funnel, it was slipping earlier, with either a tack or something, right? And this is your rain gauge. Now you collect this information and you can now measure the rainfall. So say for instance, you have a very rainy month. Each day, as seen on our screen, you can collect the information as to how much rain has fallen, and then you can of course use that information to make your forecast. So you could say, okay, Based on this trend, so much rain has fallen or the rainfall is actually declining, and so you may predict that the next day you may not have any rainfall. All right, and that is how we use our weather information. All right, so I hope you will actually try this one. All right, so what did we learn today? Obviously, we can use our weather instruments to provide information that we call the weather data that can be used to make forecasts. And using everyday materials as shown, we can use that to make our simple weather instruments like a rain gauge. And we know that the data that's collected is useful, or farmers use that information to know when they should plant, right? When they should reap. Businesses may use that information, and certainly households will use that information to determine how to prepare for the next day. That's all for today. Thank you, students, and try this, but make sure you have adult supervision. Goodbye.